Okay, everyone needs to stop what they're doing because I'm about to tell you about the most politically explosive Olympic rivalry of 2026, and honestly, it goes way beyond sports. This is about identity. This is about loyalty. This is about money. This is about two governments competing for influence. And it's all centered around two young women. Alysa Liu and Eileen Gu. Both born in America. Both of Chinese descent. Both incredible athletes. But the paths they've taken could not be more different. And right now the internet is absolutely tearing itself apart debating which one represents the right choice. So let me break down this entire situation because there are so many layers, and honestly by the end of this you're gonna understand why this has become such a massive cultural and political flashpoint. Let's get into it. First, let me introduce you to Alysa Liu because her story is absolutely wild and honestly sounds like a movie plot. Alysa is 20 years old. She's a figure skater competing for Team USA at the 2026 Milano Cortina Winter Olympics. She just won gold in the team event. Amazing achievement. But what makes her story so incredible is her family background. Alysa's father is Arthur Liu. And Arthur Liu is a Chinese dissident and political refugee. Back in 1989, when Arthur was in his 20s, he participated in the Tiananmen Square protests in Beijing. If you don't know what that was, it was a massive pro-democracy movement where Chinese citizens, mostly students, protested against the communist government, demanding political reform, freedom of speech, all that stuff. And the Chinese government responded by sending in tanks and troops. They massacred hundreds, possibly thousands of protesters. It's one of the darkest moments in modern Chinese history. And the Chinese government to this day censors any mention of it. You can't talk about Tiananmen Square in China. It's been erased from history books. It's blocked on the internet. The government pretends it never happened. But Arthur Liu was there. He protested. And because of that he had to flee China as a political refugee. He eventually settled in the San Francisco Bay Area. He put himself through law school. Became an attorney. And raised his daughter Alysa to be one of America's most promising figure skaters. Now here's where it gets really intense. In October 2021, when Alysa was 16 years old, the FBI contacted Arthur Liu. They told him that he and his family were targets of a Chinese government spying operation. Like actual espionage. The Chinese Communist Party was surveilling the Liu family in America. They were trying to intimidate them. They wanted to scare them into staying silent about human rights violations in China. Alysa was preparing to compete at the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics at the time. Her first Olympics. And the FBI was warning her family that China was watching them. Arthur told the Associated Press, "We believed Alysa had a very good chance of making the Olympic team and truly were very scared." He said China was probably just trying to intimidate us, to in a way threaten us not to say anything to cause trouble to them and say anything political or related to human rights violations in China. The FBI told Arthur that a man named Matthew Zebures had been hired by the Chinese government to conduct surveillance on the Liu family. Zebures actually called Arthur in November 2021 pretending to be an official with the U.S. Olympic Committee. He asked for Arthur's and Alysa's passport numbers, claiming it was a COVID preparedness check. Arthur refused because he didn't feel good about it. He thought something fishy was going on. And he was right. Zebures was later arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit interstate harassment and illegal use of identification. He was working for China to spy on Chinese dissidents living in America. And the Liu family was one of his targets. Now think about how terrifying that must have been for 16-year-old Alysa. She's about to compete at the Olympics in Beijing. The city where her father protested decades ago. The city that wants to silence her family. And the FBI is telling her that the Chinese government is spying on her. That they know about her Instagram posts where she talked about human rights violations against Uyghurs in China. That they're trying to intimidate her family. Arthur Liu told the media I had concerns about her safety. But he also said this is her moment. This is her once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to compete at the Olympic Games. I'm not going to let them stop her from going, and I'll do whatever I can to make sure she's safe, and I'm willing to make sacrifices so she can enjoy the moment. I'm not going to let them win to stop me, to silence me from expressing my opinions anywhere. So Arthur agreed to let Alysa compete in Beijing, but only with assurances from the State Department and the U.S. Olympic Committee that she would be closely protected. Alysa had at least 2 people escorting her at all times while she was in China. Bodyguards. Security. The U.S. government was protecting an American teenager from the host country at the Olympics. That's how serious this was. And Alysa competed. She placed 7th. She was the youngest woman in the competition. And she made it through safely. But the whole experience was shaped by this cloud of political tension and danger. Fast forward to now. 2026 Milano Cortina Olympics. Alysa just won gold in the team event. She's become a star. And she's been very open about her political views. She's spoken out about immigration rights. She's attended protests. She said, coming from a family of immigrants, I think immigrants deserve rights. She's called out faults in our own government. She's not afraid to be political, even though it makes some people uncomfortable. And her family's history with Tiananmen Square and Chinese espionage has made her a symbol. To many Americans, especially conservatives, Alysa Liu represents patriotism. She represents standing up to authoritarianism. She represents choosing America over China even when China tried to intimidate her. One viral post on social media said, "In a world of Eileen Gu and Alysa Liu." That post has been shared thousands of times. And it perfectly captures how people are framing this rivalry. Alysa is the hero. The patriot. The one who chose the right side. Now let's talk about Eileen Gu, because her story is completely different and way more controversial. Eileen Gu is 22 years old. She's a freestyle skier. And she was born in San Francisco just like Alysa. Her mother Yan Gu is a first-generation Chinese immigrant who moved to the U.S. in the 1980s. Her father is American. Eileen grew up splitting her time between San Francisco and Beijing. She went to private school in California. She got into Stanford University. She's lived an incredibly privileged life. And she was a rising star in freestyle skiing, competing for Team USA. But then in 2019, when she was 15 years old, Eileen announced that she was switching her allegiance. She would no longer compete for the United States. She would compete for China. She posted on Instagram and Weibo saying, through skiing she hopes to help inspire millions of young people in China and to unite people, promote common understanding, create communication, and forge friendships between nations. That all sounds nice. But people immediately questioned her motives. Because China doesn't allow dual citizenship. So for Eileen to compete for China, she either had to renounce her American citizenship or China had to make a special exception for her. And to this day, Eileen has refused to clarify her citizenship status. She won't say if she's still American or if she gave up her passport. That ambiguity has fueled massive criticism. At the 2022 Beijing Olympics, Eileen won 2 gold medals and 1 silver. She became a superstar in China. And she became one of the highest-paid female athletes in the world. According to Forbes, she earned $23 million in 2025. Almost all of that $23 million came from endorsements. She has deals with Tiffany, Louis Vuitton, Porsche, Red Bull, IWC, Schaffhausen, and a ton of Chinese brands. She's the face of luxury in China. She's on magazine covers. She's a celebrity. And now here's the bombshell. A leaked budget document from Beijing's Municipal Sports Bureau shows that China paid Eileen Gu and another American-born athlete nearly $14 million in public funds over 3 years to support their training and recruitment. $14 million from the Chinese government. The document was briefly public then quickly scrubbed from the internet. But journalists captured it. And it's caused a massive scandal. Because now it looks like Eileen didn't just switch to China for heritage or inspiration. She switched for money. Government money. Millions of dollars from an authoritarian regime. And here's what makes it even worse. Reports say that China made a similar offer to Alysa Liu's family. They tried to recruit her to compete for China. They offered money. They offered support. But Arthur Liu said no. He rejected it. Because of his history with Tiananmen Square. Because he's a political refugee who fled that government. There's no amount of money that would make him let his daughter represent the regime that massacred his fellow protesters. So Alysa stayed with Team USA. And Eileen took the money and switched to Team China. That's the contrast. That's why people are so angry. It's not just about sports. It's about values. It's about what you're willing to sell out for. Now Eileen has tried to defend herself. She said her decision wasn't about money. That it was about her heritage and wanting to inspire Chinese youth. She told Time magazine the US already has the representation. I like building my own pond. She insisted the potential to earn more representing Chinese companies didn't cross her mind. But nobody believes that. Because the numbers don't lie. 23 million in endorsements. 14 million in government funding. She's making a fortune representing China. And she's staying silent on every human rights issue. China is committing genocide against Uyghurs. China imprisons political dissidents. China censors the internet. China doesn't allow freedom of speech. And Eileen, who was born and raised in America with all the freedoms this country provides, has said nothing. She won't criticize China. She won't speak out. Former NBA player Enes Kanter Freedom called her a traitor. He wrote Eileen Gu is a traitor. She was born in America, raised in America, lives in America, and chose to compete against her own country for the worst human rights abuser on the planet, China. She built her fame in a free country, then chose to represent an authoritarian regime while cashing in on endorsements linked by watchdog groups to mass detention and forced labor camps. When human rights come up, she disappears. That's harsh. But a lot of people agree with him. At the 2026 Olympics, Eileen just won silver in slopestyle. And after the event, she said something that made people even more mad. She said, "Sometimes it feels like I'm carrying the weight of two countries on my shoulders." Two countries. But she only competes for one. She only wears China's jersey. So what does she mean, two countries? Critics said you represent one country. The one printed on your jersey. You don't get to claim both when it's convenient. You made your choice. Live with it. And then Eileen defended another American athlete, Hunter Hess, who said he didn't want to represent the US because of Trump's policies. Trump called Hess a loser. And Eileen came to Hess's defense, saying it was unfair. But people pointed out the hypocrisy. Eileen will criticize America. She'll defend people criticizing America. But she won't say a single word about China's human rights abuses. That tells you everything you need to know about where her loyalties are. So now you have these two athletes. Both American-born. Both of Chinese descent. Both at the same Olympics. But representing completely opposite things. Alysa Liu, the daughter of a Tiananmen Square protester who was spied on by China and still chose to compete for America. Eileen Gu, the daughter of privilege who switched to China for millions of dollars in endorsements and government funding. Social media has turned them into symbols. Alysa is the patriot. Eileen is the sellout. Alysa is integrity. Eileen is opportunism. Alysa is American values. Eileen is authoritarian money. It's not fair to reduce these young women to symbols. They're human beings with complex identities and personal motivations. But that's what's happening. And it's because the US-China relationship is so tense right now. We're in a new Cold War. These two countries are competing for global influence. And sports has become a battleground. There's also a class element to this. Eileen grew up wealthy. Private school. Stanford. Debutante balls in Paris. She's elite. She's privileged. And critics say her decision to compete for China was a calculated business move by someone who's never had to struggle. Alysa's family, by contrast, has a history of political struggle. Her dad fled China. He rebuilt his life in America. He put himself through law school. He raised Alysa while dealing with surveillance and intimidation. That narrative resonates with people. It's the American dream. Immigrant makes good. Stands up to tyranny. Raises a champion. Versus Eileen, who had every advantage and chose money over country. Again, that's reductive. But that's the narrative. What's also interesting is how Asian Americans are reacting to this. Actor Simu Liu said he was freaking proud of Eileen Gu and called her inspirational, resilient, intelligent. And he got absolutely destroyed online. People told him to go back to China. They called him a traitor. The backlash was so intense that it showed how polarizing this issue is even within the Asian American community. Some Asian Americans see Eileen as someone embracing her heritage and breaking down barriers. Others see her as someone selling out to an authoritarian regime for profit. There's no middle ground. And the timing of all this is wild. We're living through the most aggressive ICE deportation campaign in US history. Bad Bunny just performed at the Super Bowl with anti-ICE messaging. Cardi B threatened to fight ICE agents at her concert. There's this whole conversation happening about immigration and identity and who gets to be American. And Alysa Liu, who comes from an immigrant family, has been outspoken about immigrant rights. She said immigrants deserve rights. She's attended protests. She's using her platform to speak out. Meanwhile, Eileen, who could use her massive platform to speak about human rights, stays silent when it comes to China. It's a stark contrast. So what's the takeaway here? Well, it depends on your perspective. If you're conservative, you probably see Alysa as a hero and Eileen as a traitor. If you're more progressive, you might see it as more complicated. You might say Eileen has the right to embrace her Chinese heritage. That she shouldn't be forced to choose. That she can be both Chinese and American. But then the citizenship question comes up. And the money. And the silence on human rights. And it gets messy. What's undeniable is that these two athletes have become proxy figures in a much larger geopolitical conflict. And that's not fair to them. But it's reality. When you're at the Olympics representing a country, you become more than just an athlete. You become a symbol. And symbols get weaponized. Alysa Liu is skating again on February 17th in the women's singles event. Eileen Gu is competing in halfpipe and big air. Both of them have chances to win more medals. And every time they compete, people are gonna be watching not just for the athletics but for what they represent. This rivalry is gonna define these Olympics. And it's gonna continue long after the games are over. Because this isn't about sports. This is about everything. So there you have it. Alysa Liu versus Eileen Gu. FBI surveillance versus government millions. Tiananmen Square protesters' daughter versus San Francisco elite. Team USA versus Team China. Patriot versus traitor, depending on who you ask. The most politically charged Olympic rivalry of 2026. What do you think? Is Eileen a sellout, or is she just embracing her heritage? Is Alysa a hero, or is the whole framing unfair? And should athletes be judged for which country they compete for? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Make sure you subscribe because this story is gonna keep developing and you need to stay updated. Until next time, remember that sports and politics have always been connected and they always will be. Peace.